You mentioned something last week that I wanted to talk about, which was I believe the concept is cultivating your inner light is what you mentioned.
I might have.
Does that sound like something you've talked about before?
Well, I certainly talk about the inner light, and I talk about cultivating our awareness of our inner nature. And one of the ways to talk about that is that it's light. So it's one of the things that I probably said. I do say that. I talk about cultivating our essential nature, our inner nature, our inner wisdom, our inner strength, our inner light. Um, some people call it the inner self. I mean, for me, all of these words are interchangeable because they're words. you know, the experience is the experience. I think the experience is always the same, whether it
Right.
feels, whether it feels like light, whether you see it as light, whether you understand it as light. Um, it is in fact light because it's energy, which is what light is made out of. But it's also consciousness. And in fact, my understanding is that the Sanskrit word Chiti, Chiti, which is also a name for the female divinity, the goddess or the deity, um, one of the names, many names, that it is used both to mean consciousness, but also to mean light, like these little particles, these little scintillating particles of light that we see sometimes in front of us. At least I do. I just assume everybody does. Um, so that's Chitti. What is it? It's like the building blocks or the underpinning of everything in the universe. It's divine consciousness, but it's already emanated into the world or manifest in the world as light. So even when we talk about light, it's like, what are we talking about? That's already a stage of manifestation. Like, what did we start with? What were we? What was everything? That pure consciousness. Some people call it the void. Some people call it nothingness. Some people call it, um, all kinds of different names, different traditions. In Hebrew, the Kabbalists call it Ein Sof, which just means, no end. That's what it means. So it's like infinity. It's like the same word. In Kashmir Shaivism, it's called Paramashiva. It's the primordial being. It's the primordial consciousness. And it just is. So when we start perceiving it as having any kind of form, even a subtle form like light, we're already moving into the world more out of this, pure state. Now, the understanding is, and I think the experience is, once you experience that, is that it's still consciousness. It's still God. It's still divine. It's still pure. But it's also this. It's also this world, and it's us, which feels very impure a lot of the time, and limited, and finite. And it is, because the body's mortal. We're mortal. We know that. So there's this duality. There's this dialectic. There's this sort of juggling of our experience, constantly shifting experience of feeling transcendent. You're at a sunset and you just kind of go, oh, there's a piece in the New York Times recently about, they scientize everything. So it's like the science of awe, wonder. It's like, I'm in awe. Oh, can we study that? Can we look at like what happens to people when they're in a state of awe? You know, or awestruck, you know. Can we look at that? And yeah, of course we can, but it's not really the point. The point is to have that direct experience of the power of the wonder. You know, Heschel said, I asked for wonder. You know, what is wonder? It's that exploration, that desire to connect with that state. And so one of the colors of that state, or one of the shades of that state, we might call it awe, we might call it wonder, we might call it transcendence, we call it all kinds of things. But what it really is it's tapping into that state that is our inner state. It's our inner nature. It's our essential nature. It's who we are, ultimately, inside. Even though we're all of this, you know, I'm not saying I'm not this. I am. But I'm also that, you know, so when we say this mantra that I love, Soham, what are we saying? We're saying, I am that. That's the that that I'm identifying with. Is that truth, that nature. And to me, that's what the spiritual path is. It's learning or becoming conditioned or transforming to the point where we can more and more and more and more integrate those two realities. Yes, we are that. We are that light. So we're cultivating our familiarity, our relationship with it. And it's like anything else in the world. Like the more you engage with it, the more you hang out with it, you know, or a person, the more you connect with that person, the more you visit that place, with whatever image is operant, the more familiar you are with it, and the more it affects you, and the more it becomes natural. It's like you start to know like how to hang out in a certain place or in a certain culture or with certain people. And it's the same. It's like, how do I hang out with this inner reality and this external world that I'm living in, and this, you know, this mortal body and this eternal self? How do I live my life in both of those places at the same time? So when I talk about cultivating or tapping into, what I'm really talking about is the merging of my experience as a limited human being with the experience of my infiniteness, of my radiance. Patanjali, the great yoga master, called it the inner radiance. So if that's what I said, then that's probably what I meant. Some version of that. And you know, one thing I love about talking about it, about writing about it, about meditating around it, contemplating it, is you're basically looking at the same truth, the same reality, just through these different lenses, different windows, or different perspectives. The truth doesn't change, but our perspective does, and we start to get more familiar. I said something in one of my meditation classes a week ago, and I didn't quite remember saying it. I intended to say it, and I said it, and then someone read it back to me. One of the people in the class said that what I had said, well, so here's the context. So basically our classes these days at the JCC in Manhattan are on Zoom. But now that people are starting to come back into the building, we're doing a hybrid. So there's a small group of people that like to come into the room every day. And even if the teacher's on Zoom, they like to be on their computers on Zoom, but they're together. They like to do that. So every now and then we go in, the leaders go in and we lead. And so this one morning, a week ago on a Tuesday, it was my turn to go in. And so I'm walking to this building, which is like 15 blocks away. And I was noticing how natural it is for me to go there. Yeah, I've been there hundreds of times, hundreds over the years. I've taught there for 15, maybe 20 years at this point. And I've gone to a lot of programs there. And I'm walking and I'm noticing how familiar it is. It's not even like, I could tell you what's on 88th Street. Like, I'm not even sure what's where, but I know how to get there. It's very natural. And so when I was talking to the meditation group, I said, it's like when I come here, I've been here hundreds of times. I know the way. And you've all been meditating over and over again. You know the way. You know how to go inside. It's not that different because it's familiar. So what I think happens at a certain point on the life journey, on the spiritual journey, which, they merge, is that you start noticing that the concrete things that you do in the external world have parallels in the inner world. So like, if you tell me to go to a certain store that's like around the corner, or to walk to the JCC, or walk to the synagogue, or walk to a good friend's house, like, I don't have to ask the way, and I don't have to ask the way to go inside either. So when I use the word cultivate, part of what I'm really talking about is we're not so much cultivating the lights. We're not so much cultivating our inner nature. We're cultivating our relationship with it, our ability to tap into it, because it's always there. It's always there.
So using your example, we're going down the path again, so it becomes more familiar.
Yeah. It becomes familiar. People often ask me how I meditate. Like, okay, you're leading this class, you're leading this group, you're teaching, like, you're telling us all these things, and you're like, what do you do? So the first thing I always say is, well, if I'm leading, if I'm teaching, whatever I invite you to do, I'm doing it with you. I'm not going to invite you to imagine the inner light, and I'm going to go do something else. In my mind.
I get the image of you getting people into the state and then going and getting a sandwich. I mean, it's
Yeah,
like,
it's like, because it is like that, or it's like, you make this great meal for everybody, but you're eating something else.
right.
So if I'm inviting you to do something, I'm doing it with you. And also, the first time I said this, it felt silly, what I'm about to say. But then I did some trainings, and I discovered that people were teaching practices that were not that familiar to them. So I do say, if people ask me, or sometimes I volunteer, but not usually, I never teach anything that I don't practice. Seems obvious to me, I'm not going to teach glass blowing. I have no idea how to do that. There are esoteric meditations in different traditions that I have practiced in workshops, that I have read about, that I have learned exist, that I don't practice. I ain't teaching that. It's not happening because it's not authentic coming from me. And it was surprising that people do that. It was surprising, that somebody would say to me, somebody that I knew was a relatively newly minted meditation teacher, and said, "Oh, I'm teaching this," and I was saying, "Well, how long have you been doing that practice?" "Oh, I did it in this class." I'm like, "Now you're teaching it?" I didn't say that, but that's what I was thinking. So there's that. What I do when I meditate, and I do different things on different days, but mainly what I'm doing is, and I'll show you, so maybe you could see what it looks like on the outside. Maybe it doesn't look like anything on the outside. What I do, usually I close my eyes. I don't always. And I just like click in. And sometimes it feels like I'm immersed in an image, like an image of a pool of clear water. And sometimes it's light. And sometimes, like just now, when I just sort of shifted my awareness, it's just dot, dot, dot. And then I notice, as right now, I notice that I'm breathing. I'm kind of giving you, like the play-by-play of what is actually, what's actually happening at this moment. And then as I was breathing, I was aware that my breath felt like it was in my heart space. And I just sit, and whatever happens or doesn't happen, happens or doesn't happen.
How long do you meditate for?
It varies. I meditate every day. Um, Usually not more than an hour. But I have, and then I've meditated for hours. But that was sort of in my student meditation student days. We would go to these programs. They were very intensive, and we would meditate for like hours at a time.
Okay.
Sometimes it's a few minutes, but also, I meditate with people that I work with individually. I meditate in my classes, my groups. Often what happens is I'll wake up and I don't go back to sleep. I meditate. One of the things that happens for me is that meditation kind of meditates me. So it starts to weave itself through my day. Like I'll be sitting at my computer at my desk, and then all of a sudden I just get really still. And I'll sit for a few minutes. See, like I am right now, but I'm also talking to you. And then I can, come out more, like my attention is more now focused on you than it was 5 seconds ago. It was focused more internally, even though I was seeing you. There's this great state called Shambhavi Mudra. A mudra is like an energy position. Like in yoga, we talk about mudras like chin mudra, when you put your fingers like this on your knees, and you're meditating. Some people do that. So Shambhavi Mudra means it's like my eyes are open, but my gaze is turned toward my own self. It's turned within. It's not turned toward myself like my ego and I'm thinking about my life. It's more like it's turned within myself. So like right now I'm doing a version of that. So my eyes, I don't know what you see. I'll take my glasses off so maybe you can see better. So I'm looking inside.
Let me just add, are your eyes going up? Are your eyes going up? You're looking upwards?
I'm looking inside. I mean, you tell me if my eyes look like they're moving up. I don't know.
Because there's a practice I've learned from a couple different people that
Yeah,
yours you
this.
still yeah, exactly, yeah, okay.
So you can do that. That's a version of that.
But you're staring forward, but you're looking inwards. Okay.
Exactly. So bring my eyes back down. So I'm looking inside. I'm aware that you're there. I'm not looking at you, but I'm aware that you're there. My eyes are open. I'm aware of everything around me. If something caught fire, I would see it. That's not why I'm doing it, but you know. So that's a practice. And what that practice does in my understanding, I wouldn't say I'm adept at it, but in my understanding, what it does is brings the inner and the outer together. And like any other mental practice or spiritual practice, I would say, or meditative practice, what matters is where's your attention?
Right.
What are you aware of? What are you attending to? And I think there's some combination of attention and intention. So like right now, I'm intending to look at you. I'm talking to you. Sometimes I think we all do this, but sometimes you're talking to somebody and they're kind of like they're out here somewhere. It's like they're accessing, they're accessing information. Well, they're downloading it or they're in their own head, and one of my, I've told you before, like when I started leading meditations, I was involved in a sort of an informal group of peer coaches. Like we were coaching each other. And one of my friends who often would coach me before I led a meditation or I would coach her, we'd prepare a talk and we'd give it to each other and we'd lead each other into meditation so that we could actually have that experience. And then you could tell the other person, that was a little vague for me. And that would help us in leading. So she once said to me, I guess I was kind of doing that. And she said, looks like you're accessing information. Like just talk to us. So, because like, where's your attention? How present are you? Are you in here somewhere? And yeah, there's times for that. And there's times to download information if it's coming to you from wherever it's coming, on the earth plane, beyond the earth plane. But the amazing thing that we learn is that the more present you are here and now, the more present you also are on the inner level.
Right.
The irony is that if you're in this moment, you can move inexorably to the next moment. But when you're kind of, like people will say, oh, but that happened. Like in meditation, sometimes people say, well, I had this great experience. I had this feeling and it was amazing. I felt at one with the universe and then I didn't feel that. And then I got frustrated because I wanted to feel that. And I was trying to like recapture that experience and hold on to it. And I said, well, the way to recapture is to let go of it. Because then you're here. Then you're available to this moment. What's going to happen at this moment?
So that's actually an interesting thing that you just brought up about the this moment versus letting go. There's been times in recent in the past year, especially, I've had these interesting states, and they've been exciting and they've been enlightening and explorative, and like there's been times where I'm standing there and I feel connected to everything. I just don't, it's like I am not even here and I'm everything at the same time. And the hard part for me was the state will go away. So I'm trying to remember all the different things that I did to get to that state, which is actually when you think about it, is like years of practices and other stuff. And it's not just like, oh, I twist my ear that way that one day, and but it was like this interesting thing because one of the things I had to realize was in order to get that state that happened is gone. It's already happened. Right. So, but the presence, and then I had to realize that in order to get to another interesting state, whatever that was, I had to accept that it's just whatever's going to happen, which was very, very hard to do, just being very present in that space, because I want that feeling from before, I want that exciting feeling. And then to let it go was hard, to be like, okay, whatever. And then the understanding of letting it go and just being here allowed for the next space, which is even more interesting than what I thought, but that's a hard thing to do, to let go. It's especially in the beginning, it's very, very, it's not necessarily in nature. You want to hold on to what's good. Right. So it's
yeah. So here's the method. And then I'll give you a nuance. So the method is, so like right now, you're telling me about this experience. Right? A moment ago, you told me about this experience. You went like this. Now, I am pretty sure that in that moment, you were feeling it. When you were telling me that it was present for you. So the way to have it is to recall it. Not like to hold it. I want that back, or to chase it. Like, where is that? What, how did I get there? No. It's like you're telling me, or you're telling yourself, and you're bringing it back. You're bringing your experience of it back to yourself. Because the state didn't go away, Matthew. The state can't go away. The state's always there. Our experience of it is fleeting. So once we know the state's there, and the next time I remember it, it might look different. It might feel different, but it's the same state. And how do I know that? Because of how I feel. I feel light. I feel inspired. I feel uplifted. I feel powerful. So we recall it, not like to replicate it like we're replicating DNA in a lab, but to re-experience that state, because it is us. So it's different than like, we just did this. We saw this movie, we really liked it, and then there was a sequel. So we saw the sequel. Because we wanted to have that, because it was entertaining and it was fun and it was mysterious and clever. And so we watched the sequel, and the sequel we kind of went, well, it's sort of clever. It's sort of mysterious. It's sort of entertaining. It's not the same. Didn't give us that same buzz that the first film did. So I'm saying about these, for lack of a better term, mystical experiences. They will come in other forms. We can also invite them by remembering.
Right.
And what does happen is it changes our physiology. I mean, that's the whole science of imagery. And there is a science to it. I think of it both as a spiritual science and as a contemporary science, that we understand. You see all these athletes. They're going to dive into the water, or they're going to do, an ice skating routine, or they're going to hit a golf club. They're going to hit the ball. And what are they doing? They're doing like a mental rehearsal before they do it. It's like an imagery projection. They do the dive in their head. There was a study a long time ago. I don't know if it was repeated, but there was a study that showed that when they had, I think with skiers, they had them sort of mentally remembering their routine. And they noticed that there were changes in their muscles. They weren't skiing. They were just skiing in their.
So just to catch you up to date on that thing, the visualization technique is being done a lot. Actually, Tim Curry, who is on the Warriors, is probably one of the best players out there right now. He had a hand surgery, and he's a point guard.
Oh, okay.
But he had hand surgery. One of the things that he did while he was recovering, he was just visualizing shooting in his hospital bed. And when he came back, it was like he didn't even miss any time,
So what I'm saying is it's actually the same. It's like I have this whole, well, a lot of us do. I have this whole slideshow on my screensaver, and there's my family and there's my grandchildren, but also there are particularly this one place, this Swami Gardens on the Pacific, that I remember the feeling that I had when I was sitting there. And so I have a photo of that on my screen. And whenever it comes up, it's like, oh, I have that experience, have that feeling. But I think it's really important to differentiate the experience that we have of it and it itself, which is our state. And then, the mind likes to put stickers on things. Okay, this is awe. This is enlightenment. This is light. This is serenity. This is consciousness. That's okay. It helps us to remember. It helps us to understand. Gives us insight and discernment. And the truth is that all the labels are accurate and not fully accurate because it's about direct experience. And I've had people who've been sitting with me for years who, like, after meditation will say, and after I speak, will say, oh, it's about direct experience. Oh, I thought I was just calming myself down. Oh, because most people come for dealing with their anxiety or dealing with their suffering or dealing with their pain, dealing with their rage, their sadness. That's why most people show up. Every now and then somebody shows up because they want more spiritually. But most people come because they want to calm down. They're having a hard time. I am completely compassionate toward that, but I want more for them. I want them to be able to weave that awareness into their lives. So first you have to experience it. It's like, I've had this happen many times. Like, I'll get off a subway and I walk up the stairs and I go, like, when I go to Brooklyn. It's not that exotic, but I'll get out at get out at Barclays, and I'm looking around and going, do I go this way? Do I go that way? Do I go that way? Do I turn behind me? Like, I need to reorient myself. And then there's a moment where you kind of go, I know where I am. I know where I am. I know how to get here. So one of the things I always tell people when you're meditating, find what resonates with you. Like, find your own map, so to speak, your own method. And it's fine. People like to shake it up or mix it up. That's fine. But some people will say, when I meditate, I always dot, dot, dot. It's like, really? Everybody doesn't have to do that. You know, I mean, I know somebody who would probably walk to Brooklyn from the Upper West Side. And she would find her way,
Right, right, right.
So it doesn't matter how you get there, you get there. I remember, John Bradshaw, who wrote these books about the inner child. And I remember him saying, he was talking about how we shame people. And he was saying, if you and I both get on a plane at JFK and my plane gets there before your plane, you did not fail Los Angeles.
Right. That's very funny. That's a very, I like that analogy. Yeah, that's very good. Yeah.
So sometimes people will say, well, it took me a little longer to calm my mind down today. And it's like, okay. Or I couldn't calm my mind down at all today. Well, it's okay. You're still meditating. So yeah, I love that Bradshaw example because it's like what we do to ourselves and to each other. It's like, oh, I'm doing it wrong. Oh, I had this great experience and I lost it. And now we feel bad because we lost it. We're angry at ourselves. If I was a great yogi, I would still be feeling that nonsense.
Even the great yogi has a bad day. Pissed off his laundry wasn't done fast enough.
Or even if they don't, it's like it's not. There's no lesson in that. It's like, okay, you had a great experience. Can we savor that? Can we remember that? Can we honor that? Instead of beating ourselves up and saying, oh, I'm feeling so great. And then, I came out of meditation and I got this phone call and now my day is ruined. Well, if there's something you need to do it. But can you reconnect with that experience? Not by feeling bad that you're not having it, but by remembering it. What did it feel like? What did it look like? What did it sound like? How did it make you feel?
Right.
And I think that's one of the values of sharing and of satsang or sangam of community, where you say to someone, had this insight during meditation, and then the other person kind of has this flash, or you had this moment where everything's still, and we can actually go there with you. I think the trick is to realize that we can do that with ourselves. We can bring ourselves back into that experience. But with honor, by honoring it, by treasuring it, not by lamenting it. It's great, but it's gone. Oh, poor me. Well, we do that. It's the nature of the mind, the nature of the ego.
Mm.
Is any of this helpful?
No, it's totally something you said before, something that I was thinking about recently, and I thought of it from a Jewish perspective, right? There's this guy named Eitan Katz who's a musician who does like a lot of niguns, and he quotes on one of his songs. He quotes something from the Torah, and he talks about Moshe writing down something about ma'od, using the word ma'od, which means more, right? And he says, what does ma'od mean? It's very hard because Torah is always exact, right? And this isn't the important thing that I find interesting, right? The important thing is So if we're always getting closer to salvation or whatever it is, right? Whatever that thing is, um, then it's like, do you know calculus a little bit? I don't know. I mean, we've never talked math a little bit, right? So you have this idea of a limit, right? And as you get closer, it just keeps on expanding, and you're just getting closer and closer. But the number keeps, you're never really there because you're always just going towards something, right? So it's like that constant state of always being closer, infinitely closer, but you're always at a pause. So to yesterday, you were half farther away, but now, and then let's say there's a halfway, so now you're getting closer and closer and closer. So you're constantly close. So you're in this perpetual state of, it's almost as though you're pausing and waiting while you're in the action itself. And I find that when you were talking about the ability just to be still and to be inwards, right? Really, in in a sense, if you're trying to do something, you can always, people do time blocking, and they do like hour, 15 minutes blocks. They could do it by 5-minute blocks, by a minute blocks, and then you go into like the minute, and then you go into the second, and you go into the half second. But you can make a decision every single time within that space. The things, you can still always make a decision whether you're reacting or you're whatever movement you're doing to that second where it's not even a moment. It's a quark, so to speak, right? It's a quark of a moment. And then, but that's that perpetual state. If you're able to be in that state in that moment, that's incredible. I thought about this the other day for the first time. I was like, that thing is incredible. However long it lasts, it's like that. So you're always present, because you have to be present in order to realize what it is that you're in and to see self, right? And then at the same time, these things are happening, and maybe it's gone, and it's an ephemeral moment, but it's there and it's gone. And I think it's just like, so yes, the answer is what you're saying makes sense, but this is something I've thought about, and what you said made sense because I've been thinking about the ability to look inwards at the same time as you're being present in the same moment. So it's pretty amazing. I don't know if I made any sense there, but it was just
quite a bit. So when I was here to talk about the sort of math progression, so I was thinking of a couple of things. So one of the things I was thinking about is being and becoming. Like we're always being and we're always becoming. So, like you said, it's like there's this like infinite progression. Like you keep moving forward, but you're also, it's like you're here, but you're here in relation to where you're going. It's like you're on a moving sidewalk. It's like you are moving forward, but if you are on an infinitely moving sidewalk, there's always somewhere that you are. But at the same time that you are here, wherever that here is, and wherever that now is, you're also moving forward. That's why it's so challenging when we talk about presentness. There's this, I'm sure I've said this to you before, but I'll say it again because I love it so much. So and you can Google this, there was this great conversation between James Brown, the great blues artist, and Michael Tilson Thomas, the great classical conductor, composer, pianist. And Michael Tilson Thomas was saying that one of the things you do as a conductor is to get everyone to agree where now is. And James Brown said, now, yeah, now. Like when I said now, it was now then, but now it's gone.
It's like that great moment with what's his name from How I Learned to Love the Bomb, where he goes, "Let's all get our clocks at the right time." Oh, my clock stopped. Right, it's like
Yeah, it's it's
Interstellar. Yeah, yeah,
like that. Yeah, it's like a conundrum, and yet what I think Tilson Thomas was saying was, but we can agree. We can decide together that this is now, but we also know it's an illusion, because by the time we realize that we're now, we're in another moment. Now it's over, like James Brown said. You know, so how do we do that? And I think that's the answer. That's our life. How do we do that? How do we be and become? How do we be and do? So, like, we're doing all this stuff, and where are we? You know, I think a lot of people, I've certainly discovered this, a lot of people discover in a crisis that they're like the most centered.
right. Yeah,
They're
yeah. I was
most,
gonna use an example. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
they're most aware. And there's all this stuff going on, and they're doing it. You're managing it. Either you're getting, yourself out of a burning building, or you're helping someone who's in distress, or whatever it is. And the capacity to be fully present and centered is what allows you to do what you need to do. And that centeredness, that fully awareness, that's our state. So it would be nice to be able to carry that experience around more often than when we really, really, really need it. But we have that capacity. So to me, meditation is the vehicle. It's the path. It's how we get there. And the more we do it, the more we know the way, and the easier it is to get there. Now, what we tend to do as humans, and maybe it's more true in the West, I'm not sure, might be, but what we tend to do is look at the outcome rather than the path. So the outcome being, well, I felt more peaceful at the end of yesterday's meditation than I felt today. And then we judge it, we grade it. So yesterday's meditation was better because yesterday I felt so peaceful. And today, I give my peacefulness a 3. Yesterday it was 9. I've had people say to me, I'm telling no lies here. I've had people say to me, I give myself an F for that meditation.
Yeah. I get that a lot, actually. I get people who say I can't do it because they can't stop their thoughts. I'm like, even the greatest llama can't, he's still thinking about what he needs to eat tonight, So
well, that happens. And then there's a moment when you notice that you're doing it. So what I want people to do is notice that you're making your to-do list or planning your meal. Like, notice that you're doing it. And then you have a choice point. When you notice and you go, oh, well, I'm making my to-do list. So you can keep making your to-do list. You can choose to do that. But then that doesn't make it a bad meditation. You decided that you're going to meditate on your to-do list. Okay. Or you can say, I can do that later. Or I can, like I do sometimes, I'll scribble on a little notepad, to-do list, and I'll come back to it later. And then you can come back to the breath or to the image or to the sound or to the movement or to that, naturally coming back to that state by just deciding that you're going to come back. So even the grading, like, catch yourself giving yourself a C- for this meditation. It's like, oh, I'm noticing that I'm doing it. I'm noticing that I'm judging. Okay, what do I want to do now? I want to keep doing that? I can meditate on that. I can meditate on how bad I feel that yesterday I had a better meditation than this meditation. I can meditate on that. Oh, but yesterday I had such a great meditation.
Just to put in perspective, a C minus is a 70, which still means that you got your driver's license. Okay.
Yeah, but I mean, even if it's like an F minus, it's like so what? Because we don't know from this vantage point, like that, what you're describing as your horrible meditation may end up being the most important meditation in your entire path. Because you might decide that there's something to tweak, that there's something to let go of, that maybe there's another, like I've had people say to me, I have such a hard time sitting. My whole meditation, I'm thinking about how hard it is to be sitting on the floor. So sit in a chair. And then you won't do that anymore. Or maybe you will. Maybe you'll sit and think about the chair. I don't know. But at some point, like you notice that you're doing that, and then you have the freedom to not only do something else, but to be with it another way. That's what I mean by the being. We're not just being, we're being with our experience. So it's the awareness, it's the noticing that changes it, and we get sloppy. We all do. And if people will say something like, well, I'll try harder next time. It's like, I'll get an A next time. Yeah. And sometimes I might say to somebody, so that meditation that you had yesterday that was so great, tell me about it. And then in a moment, they're there. They're in that state. They're in that meditation again, even for an instant. See, I think one of the things that you've been saying today, which I think is crucially important, and it's one of the touchstones of my life, is that you can change your state in the sense of your experience. You can change it in an instant, in a nanosecond. I think once you know that, you have so much power over your own life experience. It's like in this moment, I could change my experience in this moment. Right. In a flash. I don't need to sit for an hour. I don't need to wait till my next meditation session. So I think that that's crucially important and profound. Like once you have that experience, what you go, like what you just did, you modeled it, it's like that. Yeah. So there's the sustainability question, so there's the flash and there's how do we sustain that. And the answer is you just keep practicing. And it becomes second nature.
But actually, speaking of that, I've been doing this other meditation recently, something other than what I started with for the last 10 years or so. And it's been interesting because it's a different way of relaxing the body. And it I don't want to say it's a different way of relaxing the body. It's different. Okay. It's a different, it relaxes the body in a different way. It works the mind differently. And what's interesting is I didn't realize that what works for me is more so what I was doing. It's a very fun meditation. I mean, it's really fun, but like it's also what works for me is more of what I started with. That's what I know. That's what really gets me into a deep state of and in the meditation. And so I I've been a little irritable, not even realizing I've been a little irritable, right? And so this today I was like, okay, let's go back to something I know, right? And just that I've been doing it, and today I feel just way more at ease and just like calmer. And but it's an interesting so what I'm looking for. It's like it's an interesting realization that it's what different things, different ways of practice will change or affect. And I also think, just from my perspective, is that it's not what I know. So I'm not maybe not taking it as seriously as what it is I know. It's supposed to teach you how to astral project, which I thought would be really cool to go fly to Mars or something, but like it's not necessarily grounding in the same way. And I find it's fun. I did it, but I need to really stay present. It's like it's much more important. I don't know. Yeah, it's interesting. It's don't astral project. You don't go anywhere.
Well, it's like what I mean by whatever resonates with you, and that could change. You know, to me, when I use these images, like meditation as a vehicle, well, yeah, there are different vehicles, so you could decide to go somewhere in a plane. You could go in a car. You could go on a bus. You could go on a train. You could walk, you know, and you might say, well, I'm in New York City and I don't think I want to walk to Minnesota, you know, so I'll go another way. And then, you get on the plane and you get there and then you go, well, I really like walking or biking more, but it was kind of far. So I went this way, so you thought, oh, astral projection. That sounds kind of cool. I'll try that. And then you go, as you just did, you say what you just did, which is, well, for me now, when I want us to be grounded, I don't want to go flying out toward Mars. Like maybe that's fine for someone else, and maybe that's fine for me another day. But I don't want that experience right now. What I want is to feel grounded. I want to feel centered, you know? So I think it's fine to try different things. I've done a lot of different types of meditation. I generally come back to a few things. Sometimes it's just that shifting in. Sometimes it's an image. Sometimes it's a mantra. Sometimes, rarely, but sometimes it's a movement. But, I've been meditating a long time. It's 46 years. And it's like what I said to my clients. It's like, I know how to get there. I know the way. I know how to go inside. So I can just go. It's like Star Trek. I can just, transport myself into myself. I can do that. But I couldn't always do that. And maybe some days I can't do that. And maybe some other people can do that and other people can't do that. Or maybe they will later, or maybe they don't want to. So, you find your way. But the point is that there are ways, and they're all on the same path, because we're all going to the same place. There's no higher or lower, no matter what anybody else will say. It's just silly. There's no higher or lower, And the meditation that you had that might not have been the experience you were looking for, like looking back on it, it might have been life-changing, might have been important. Right. Because it made you want that mode experience. That more, very experience. And sometimes it's just so subtle. You kind of like come out of meditation and you go, did anything happen? Was I meditating? And then you notice how you feel.
Right.
We used to hang out in this ashram. We used to hang out at. They had like a cafe, like a you could hang out and get you know food. You could get some drink, and we were talking to one of our friends one day, and she said, these people say I was meditating and I saw these blue lights, and it was so profound, and it was awe-inspiring. And then somebody else will say, I started having this mantra reverberating in my body, and it was so amazing. And this friend of ours said, I don't ever have any of that stuff. But my life keeps getting better. My life keeps getting better. It's like I'm not meditating for the bells and whistles. I'm meditating for my life, So it's yeah, we used to joke. Sometimes you get the hallelujah chorus, and sometimes you get stillness, and sometimes you get your own mind. So what?
Right. Yeah. So you don't know what's gonna happen in the session. That's what I always think, at least, or tell people, and then also, like, it's not what happens in it, it's the act of doing is importance.
Yeah. Yeah. Somebody once told me, it was like, I guess a teacher, there's another teacher, I'm not sure who, said, it's like pennies in a bank. And over time, you start to notice, oh, there are riches here.
Right.